Reddit, what's the worst way you've been rejected after working up the courage to ask someone out? Story 1, high school. My awkward phase. My mother tells me I'm pretty, and I finally get up the courage to ask out the cutest guy in my year to the movies. He says I'll have to think about it, and takes my cell phone number, which I thought was a good sign. We texted a few times, arranged a meet up at the movies. Gets to the day, I'm getting ready to go, make myself look all pretty and do my hair nice. I get to the movies, he's there, but so are all his friends. All of them, including the guy I liked, are laughing at the absurdity that he could ever want to go out with me, laughing at the fact I got dressed up. It was all a big prank. I have never been so humiliated. Story 2, asked the girl out. She said yes. Showed up to pick her up in my dad's 1967 black Camaro. Am I right? I'm wearing this velvet-lined snakeskin jacket. Total was the early 2000s. I roll up to the door and she's not there. She's out on a date with this guy who kicked my year or so before this. There was no man I hated quite as much as this. Anyways, her younger sister is telling me all of this. You see what happens, you know it. It's obvious. Should be a teen sitcom on NBC or some. I take out the younger sister. We ended up getting hot and heavy in the back of my dad's Camaro, and I took her virginity. Then the cop found us and made us call our parents. My mom and dad drove up first, and the cop talks to them for a little bit, and my mom and dad are giving me death stares. My dad ends up driving me home so he can set me straight. It was 2 minutes before he said a word to me. All he said was, "Did you use a condom?" I said yes, and he raised his hand to slap the out of me. Ended up giving me a high five. He let me borrow his car a lot more after that. Story 3, I had a crush on a girl for all of middle school and 2 years of high school. After my friend set me up to ask her out, she says yes, and we spent a great day together. After I get home, she calls me and tells me she's changed her mind. She goes back to her ex, and then dumps him a week later. Another mutual friend then invites her over for our 4th of July celebration. I made a custom firework, never ever do this, ever, and set it off. Problem was, I had dropped a spark into the main chamber as opposed to the fuse. What was essentially 3 flares blew up into my face. I wasn't injured at all, but when I regained composure, all I heard was that girl yelling out to my friend to see if he was okay, TLDR blinded by the light, wrapped up like another runner in the night. Story 4, in 2nd grade, I build up the courage to tell this girl Casey I liked her. I only told my friend Daniel how I felt. I got off on her bus stop 3 blocks from mine. I started walking toward her and said, "Hi, Casey." She interrupts me and yells, "Why did you get off the bus? I don't like you, and I don't want you to ever talk to me." Daniel told me everything. Just leave me alone forever. I was pretty broken up about it. I marched right to my friend Daniel's house to kick his, but his aunt told me he moved that day. Daniel, if you're out there, when I was like 14, I asked a girl to go out with me. Here's what she said, but you know you're ugly, don't you? I mean, you don't have to say that. You could just say no. Why do you add more? This is just cruel. That hurts when you're a teen. Story 5, oh, you were too early. You see, I really want to go out with XXXX, and I decided that if he hadn't asked me out by next Friday, then I would settle for you. So could you please ask me next Saturday, because then I will know if I have to or not. This was not junior high or high school. I was 32. She was 30. Both of us divorced with children. Edit, just to let anyone who asked know, I did not ask her out again the following Saturday. The other guy never asked her out either. I continued to run into her for a few years after this incident, and she became a complete train wreck. I definitely did dodge a bullet, but I've always felt sorry for her kids. Story 6, in 10th grade for prom, I did a big romantic ask involving our school's marquee, the big signs with interchangeable letters outside some schools, and she said yes. However, the night came. I picked her up. She refused to take pictures with me, barely ate her dinner, and turns out when we got to prom that she had used me just to get a ride to prom on the outskirts of Houston, around an hour away, because she didn't have a car and her actual date lived out where the prom was and didn't want to drive into town to pick her up. So we get to prom, literally, the second we walk inside. She runs away and jumps into the other guy's arms. Feels bad, man. Story 7, I was convinced that the girl was going to come to a movie with me, but she decided that she didn't want to go. So she sent a text saying, "I can't go tonight." Later, I checked Facebook. There are pictures of her with another guy at another movie theater. This was about 3 years ago. Story 8, this was back as a freshman in high school, but a popular guy kept asking me out, making a show out of it before class started. Eventually, I said yes. He gave me a pitiful look and said, I was just kidding, right? Story 9, in 1st grade, I told some girl I liked her, and we shouted go on a date. Somehow my 1st grade teacher relentlessly made fun of me for it, and the whole class did too, set me up for a bit. Story 10, I had a crush on this boy, and as a girl in middle school, you're not supposed to ask a guy out, but all of his friends said, do it, he'll say yes. So I went up to him in the lunchroom in front of everyone, and he stood there smiling, waiting for it. Then when I asked, he said, "No, are you kidding me?" Laughed and walked away. It was all set up as a funny joke, and everyone was laughing. Imagine a stupid, cheap movie with those mean high school kids. That was exactly how it went down. Really embarrassing. Story 11, asked a friend to a movie or something when I was 18. She laughed, didn't reply, just laughed. Later, she asked a mutual friend to tell me there was no chance. 2 weeks later, she was at my place asking me to be a date to a party that was coming up and totally into me. I was so confused. Story 12, just remember guys, it is so much better to ask and hear a no than it is to keep pondering over if you should have made a move. Edit spills, change to should, spills. Story 13, let me preface this by saying that I'm a guy. It was middle school and the last few days of 8th grade. After that, I would have gone off to high school. I wasn't really sure on whether or not I was gay or bi or whatever. All I knew is that I had a really big crush on someone I've known since 5th grade. After a tormenting few days, I finally got the courage to write the most intricate, most delicate love letter that I'll probably ever write in my life. I don't think it was very creepy. It was along the lines of I really like you. And I know it's weird for a boy to say that to another boy. But it's the end of the year, and I figured I'd throw caution to the wind. At the very least, I'd know that I tried instead of wondering what if. And I asked him out. I gave him this letter. I told him it was extremely personal. Instead of reading it right there, he instead took it home. Tomorrow was the last day. I couldn't have possibly been more stressed. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My heart racing the entire night. Finally, the last day of school comes, and I'm sitting on the stairs reading Ender's Game, waiting for the day to start when he comes up to me. Now, since this is the lobby, pretty much the entire student body is crowded in here, waiting for the bell to ring, so we can scatter to our homerooms. Right there, loudly, in front of everyone, he took something personal and made it into a public spectacle. I was shut down in front of the entire middle school, and at the same time, outed. I was shocked, mortified. He didn't even do it nicely or privately. Until right then, he was the nicest guy I've ever known. I didn't cry. I don't think I could have with everyone so silent, watching me like they were. The bell finally broke the silence, and everyone else shuffled off. Next year in high school, his friend was in my English class. I don't know how he started the arguing, but he started reciting something that sounded familiar. It was excerpt from a love letter the guy had a crush on, worked up the courage of 1,000 sons to ask out. He showed all his friends. Story 14, when I was 20, I worked up the courage to ask out a very pretty, smart, funny, seemingly down-to-earth girl who was in my social circle. At that time in my life, I was constantly being friend-zoned and had asked a girl out on a date more than once that the girl didn't think was a date. I kept thinking I was getting close to girls who would suddenly start dating my brother or one of my close friends. I may or may not have been pretty overweight at the time. Can't remember the chronology of this specific girl. This time I said straight out, to be clear, I'm asking you out on a date. She laughed and accepted. I was psyched. Then I started getting phone calls, several phone calls from other friends, one after the next. Before text era, of course, she had called multiple friends and acquaintances, telling them that I had asked her out, that she didn't want to go, and that she wanted their advice for letting me down gently. I was mortified. Now, not only did I not get the possibility date, I'd spent weeks working up the courage to ask out. Not only did she say no, she said no in the most public, embarrassing way possible. I just realized today that I actually left that circle of friends shortly thereafter. This wasn't the only issue, but in retrospect, it must have had an impact. Young women of Reddit, let me give you some advice. Calling a guy's entire social circle to tell them you're rejecting him so you don't have to do it yourself is about as bad as it gets. I guess I didn't learn how to ever be a player, though it is happy ending. My wife of 12 years and I still disagree on when we started dating. She claims we were just hanging out as friends for a month before we actually went out, but I thought we were dating that entire time. Oh well, it worked out okay. TLDR, when I was younger, I asked a girl out, she accepted, and then changed her mind in what seemed like the worst-case scenario at the time. Story 15, not me. Seriously, guy I know works at a boutique clothing store. Gets a crush on this girl that also works in said store. He asks her out, and her response was, I don't appreciate you talking to me. My response, goddamn. Story 16, just for the guys out there, I just want you to know that throughout my life, plenty of dudes have asked me out for which there was absolutely nothing wrong with them. In fact, I was attached to them and would have definitely said yes had I not had a boyfriend already. Sometimes no just means poor timing. Keep that in mind. Story 17, one time back in the day of LOL Instant Messenger, this girl was talking to me for a few hours. We had been friends for a few years, and I'd always liked her, but she didn't know that. Well, this night she was bugging me about who I liked and wanted to know so bad. Eventually, after probably an hour of deflecting the question, changing the subject, or straight up saying it's private, I say you, and she responds with okay, well I have to go now, bye. She ends up not talking to me for a year, and the only reason she did talk to me was because we were partnered up in a science class that next year. I also learned that around half the grade's girls was over her house that night for a big sleepover. My school was small, and my grade probably had 30 girls in it, and they all acted noticeably different around me. They wanted to find out who it was so they could embarrass me as I was a large dude back then, and people like making fun of big people. And when they found out it was her, well, I was apparently still the butt of the joke. Middle school was a lot of fun. Story 18, met a girl on Cupid. We do some internet chatting and some texting. We decide it's time to meet. I go to the spot. I see her. It's obviously her. She makes eye contact with me from about 20-ish feet away and just keeps on walking. I leave, delete her from my phone, and never heard from her again. I didn't have a Cupid account for much longer either. Story 19, can I just say, as a female, sometimes we are just as awkward and socially inept as some of the guys here, and that sometimes trying to reject someone nicely can come out as horrible and bitchy by accident. I realize this isn't the 1950s and that girls can ask guys out and guys can reject girls, but I see mostly guys being rejected by girls, which I'm sure is more common. In high school, I was friends with this guy who one day asked me out in a sort of casual way, like, we should go to the movies sometime. I was pretty sure he was asking me on a date, but not positive. I'd never been asked out before. I would have hung out with him anyway, like I said. He was a friend, so I gave some kind of answer like, yeah, sure, sounds fun. That was my first mistake. Cut to a week later, we're standing around with a group of friends, and he asks if I want to go on a date Saturday night. That was his first mistake, asking me out in front of an audience. I start panicking. I'm so inexperienced at 17, embarrassed. If he tries to kiss me, hell no. I've never been kissed before. Oh God. What if this leads to, I can't be naked in front of another human. OMG, my body is gross. What do I do? What do I do? So I stutter out a response like, sorry, I have so much homework to do with weekend. And it's obvious I'm poorly resecting him. All our friends go quiet. He says, oh, that's fine. No worries. Yep, say around. Then trips over while trying to get away. Face plants and drops all his books while all our friends stare, and a few help him up. I still feel bad about that, even though it was a couple of years ago, knowing that he probably considers that one of the most embarrassing things that has happened to him and likely thinks him a heartless. And I don't blame him for thinking that, because it was pretty harsh. It just wasn't my intention. I think it's sad because guys are forgiven for being awkward and clumsy. It's cute, or at least a part of growing up. Girls are not afforded the same understanding. As soon as we are of age, we are expected to be able to handle these situations with perfect grace in the best way possible. I actually kind of like this guy. At the very least, he was a good friend, though he never talked to me again after this. But I was too nervous and embarrassed and uncomfortable with myself to say yes. And I was too inexperienced and awkward to reject him in a mature and less silly way. I didn't getting a lot of replies about this. So let me clear something up. I'm not saying that being awkward and clumsy as a guy is easier per se. Being awkward and introverted is hard for anyone. No matter I just think that it is less acceptable for females to exhibit awkward behavior. In my humble opinion, more acceptable does not mean easier. Feel free to disagree with that one too, but I personally feel the sentiments are completely different. My reasoning is deeper in this thread. The second thing I should point out is that when I use the term cute, I meant more along the lines of, as an adult, reflecting on asking someone out in middle school, high school, rather than a 30 years old being rejected at a bar. Story 20, hey, so how do you feel about going to dinner with me sometime? What? Go out sometime, as in we go to a nice restaurant, I pay for the meal kind of thing. I might have to think about it. I thought that was a pretty rough way to get turned down by someone who I'd been friends with for a yearish. And I was at a point in my life where I was sick of taking from girls, so I didn't let it go even though it was pretty obvious she rejected me. Maybe I was a little vengeful, but I kept asking every once in a while to see if she had made up her mind yet. Eventually she asked me to go on a walk with her. We ended up talking for a while, and she finally said no. Exactly 2 years later to the day, I proposed to her the exact same spot. We dated for 2 years in between. I left some stuff out for dramatic effect. She gave me a whole rigmarole on the walk about how she was going through a lot and didn't feel like she should be dating at that time, etc., etc., etc. Of course, I thought it was bullshit, but I was happy to have forced her into a no. Apparently, she became interested in me because I was mature about the rejection and was happy to continue being friends with her. Turns out she wasn't lying. And when the crazy stuff in her life ended, she took me up on that offer for a date. The rest is history, folks. Story 21, she told me she would rather eat her own tampon. Many tears were shed that night. No, it wasn't Giovanna Plowman. Thanks for getting me to watch that disgusting video, though. Story 22, she told everyone at my small liberal arts college how awful I was. To this day, I don't understand why. I was completely nice, and if anything too shy. I always feared a girl doing this to me, which is why I was so shy in the first place. She just destroyed my self-confidence for years and years afterwards. Story 23, I think ignoring me. That's got to be the worst, because it makes you think about trying again. Maybe they didn't hear me. All sorts of possibilities fly through your head. I just want something concrete like, sorry, you're not attractive. Story 24, 12th grade, Prom, I finally got up the nerve to ask the girl I was dreaming about for the last 4 years. She says yes to my astonishment, but says sadly she or her family didn't have the money for a dress. I promptly offered to buy her dress for her. She appeared very happy. After some time, she said, let's rent a hotel room. We can go early and get it, then go home and change. So she went with me to get the room. First thing in the morning, she grabbed the key. When the clerk gave it to us, said, okay, see you tonight. We had already planned the limo and paid for it. I found it weird she wanted to pick her up first. She said she wanted to meet my parents while I go home and get ready, waiting and waiting. Limo never comes. She doesn't answer phone. I get a hold of my buddy at the prom. He tells me she is there with some other guy from another school wearing the dress I bought her, riding in the limo I paid for, and I am sure in the room I paid for. Needless to say, I have trust issues to this day. Story 25, my friend made this girl a card with a poem in it for Valentine's Day, and he asked her out. She said no and laughed at him. It doesn't help that he misspelled beautiful, and the poem went like roses are red, violets are blue, you are beautiful. We refer to that day as the Valentine's Day Massacre. Story 26, I got pepper sprayed into everything. Some context, there was this cute girl, kind of short, but really cute. She spent some time in the library reading or playing with her Game Boy PSP and had some anime buttons. So the Comic-Con was next week, and I wanted to ask her out for it, since sometimes we had been exchanging looks and whatnot, and I had nothing to lose. Well, next day, I went to ask her out for the con, and I stat-let her. She panicked and used half a can of pepper spray on me. Afterwards, some of her friends went to the nurse office to apologize for what she did, and it turns out she is androphobic, and the reason she was weary of me was because she was mugged by guys with a similar build. Now I'm gynophobic, edited for correct use of words. There might be quite a bit of spelling errors in there, so apologies in advance. Story 27, got her number when I asked her initially, bragged about it to friends. Then when I called later, she responded along the lines of EW, which she had just said no from the start, so I wouldn't have bragged. Story 28, I feel terrible because I am that girl that gets asked out. I say yes, go on a date to catch a vibe, usually no vibe. Then the guys typically still try to see me after I tell them I'm not interested. I thought it was okay to date people and see who they are before choosing. Maybe I should just sleep with them first. Story 29, asked a guy I was crushing on a prom. He said sure 2 weeks before prom. I heard that he had asked another girl. Well, I never said yes, har. Story 30, I had a crush on this seemingly shy girl in my class. Our school had periodic movie nights throughout the year where you could ask people. I walked up to her and asked, hey, want to go to the movie tonight? She smiled and said, I'd love to, but I'm not really dating at all right now. She declines, but is very nice about it. I'm like, oh, that's fine, no problem. Decide to still attend the movie with some friends. Find her seat, sit down, look to my left, there she is, laying her head on another guy's shoulder. Movie clear played. Worst night ever. Story 31. I ended up having a huge crush on this girl that started hanging out with my circle of friends via friend of friend type thing. She would hang out with us, play video games, and talk with us, and was just a generally cool girl to be around. We were friends for several months before I started having some stronger feelings for her. I finally got the courage to ask her out. She turned me down in what I hope was an attempt to be nice by saying I don't think I could look at your face and be happy if I ever slept with you. Was that her way of saying our friendship is too important to me to complicate it with feelings and intimacy? Although I appreciate your courage in asking me out, I think for now, a friendship is what I need from you. I convinced myself that was the case. I ran into her years later, and she told me not going out with me was one of her biggest regrets. We ended up going out, drinking too much, and found our way back to my apartment, where we had a great night of crazy one-night stand. I woke up the next morning, and she was gone. I never saw her or heard from her again. I guess she really could not stand seeing my face after we slept together. Edit typo. Story 32, probably too late for my sad, heart-wrenching tale. In year one, I was flattered to be proposed to by one of the girls in my class. We were married the following recess. Come lunchtime, I was devastated to find out she wanted a divorce. TLDR, got play married, took half of my real crayons. Edit, thanks for the kind words, guys. It's taken me a lot of courage to buy a new pack of Crayola crayons, and I couldn't have done it with your support, Reddit. Story 33, the first time I ever had a crush on a boy, I invited him to dinner. I cooked all on my own and everything. I waited 45 minutes before I finally just went to my room and cried. I was 13. Story 34, in the 4th grade. After 2 years of intense crushing, I asked this kid David if he liked me, and he literally balled his hands into fists and yelled, "Oh," for like a whole minute until everyone saw. Then puberty happened, and he's been kicking himself ever since. Yes. Story 35, every time I have been rejected, it's always been a no, because I have a boyfriend-inducement girlfriend, or they just tell me they aren't interested. So I guess I have had it pretty lucky that everyone has been upfront with me. Story 36. I asked a girl out to the movies in high school. She said sure. We met at the movies, and she brought her most awkward movie in my life. I knew this girl for a long time. We banged for a while when she was dating someone else. I know I'm a bad person. Anyways, I really liked her, and she broke up with him. She started making jokes about asking her out, so I did. She then stood me up after I had cooked stuffed peppers and laid a blanket and tarp out in the snow. A girl and I were friends in HS and hung out a lot. I liked her, but was too shy to ask her out. I was popular and a jock, but overweight and had serious self-esteem issues, yes. Even popular jocks are human. We flirted, and I thought she was giving me the right signs. My crush was the worst-kept secret. Everyone knew, even her, but we all just ignored the elephant in the room and continued to be friends until I could work up the courage. On Valentine's Day, I laid a large bouquet of roses and a love letter expressing my feelings and asking her out on her front porch. All I got in return was a thanks. No discussion or anything remotely related to the content of the letter. I was too embarrassed to pursue the issue and pretended it never happened. I then found out through the grapevine she didn't like me that way. She was actually waiting, hoping someone else was going to ask her out. I played it off, but was terribly hurt. Ironically, because we were such good friends, everyone expected me to ask her to prom. Including her, it was clear she would have said yes, but would have gone as friends. One night, I was hanging out with all my best girlfriends, and I impulsively asked her to the prom. She was so excited and said yes. Even though we'd be going as friends, when word got out I had asked someone else to prom, it was a scandal. The other girl never got asked to prom, and I had a fantastic night with my group of friends. Story 37. Back in 8th grade, there was this really good-looking girl named Alexandria. Let's say, well, for a while we've been talking, and I was pretty cocky and confident in my 8th grade smooth talking. I was also a foot shorter than her, around 80 pounds, but that didn't matter because I was pretty sure I was a stud. Well, the winter formal was coming up, and because only 8th graders could go, it was a biggie-ish deal. So after literally my pants, trying the first time, I'm like 75 sure she didn't notice. I want to ask for real. So I walk over, stutter a few times, and ask if she'd like to go to the winter formal with me. And she just stared at me for a good 5 seconds. Then she muttered, "Wait, what?" So I slyly repeat myself, and this time she actually answered me, and I will quote this with me. And you, that is funny as you're gay, remember. And I just started crying, not bawling, but I had tears streaming down my face. She walked away, and I tried to explain my heterosexuality to my friends that were nearby. She ended up getting in a crack, and a lot of black eyes, but I still loved to dance with her. TLDR, read it, you, this was my childhood. Story 38. After a few weeks of hanging out, I finally asked. He said, sure, we could go out sometime, but, you know, I'm gay, right? I was so shocked that all I could do was say no. No, I did not know that. Story 39. In elementary school, all the girls in my class had a crush on the same boy. A bunch of us got together and wrote all our names on a paper, which read, circle the girl you like the most. He replied with, I hate all of you. Story 40. Senior year of high school. I was in love with my best friend. I asked him to prom as friends. He said, head, think about it. Fast forward 4 months. And my other friend comes up to me and asks, hey, didn't you ask guy friend to prom? I said yes, and she said, well, I just heard that he asked and is going with other girl in our class. I was heartbroken, and when I confronted him about it, he said that he forgot that I asked him. We don't talk much anymore. Story 41. In retrospect, it was probably a bad idea to ask her in front of her friends. I had been obsessing over a girl for weeks. I was a freshman, so I was already stressed about everyone liking me since it was my first year. Well, she was a really popular girl. And the few times I mumbled out something to her, she would pick up the conversation and keep asking me questions to make me interact. She made me feel so special, like someone popular would like me as a person. So I built up the courage and approached her during study hall. I walk up and wave. She waves back with a big smile on her face, and I immediately turn red and look down. What's up, Slick? She asked. Well, I was wondering. She still had a big friendly smile on her face, trying to make eye contact with me. Her eyes were drawing the words out of me, like her eyes were prying them out of me. If you would want to, like, go out to the movies with me sometime. The cheek-to-cheek smile faded a little. Oh, well, I already have plans. I didn't even say a date yet, so I'm not sure I like you like that, maybe dash. When her friend tapped her on the shoulder and whispered something in her ear. She frowned at first, but got a stern look on her face. You should go. I don't see you that way. And I'm way out of your league anyway. My cheeks burned as if someone splashed sulfuric acid on them. I felt that tugging put at the bottom of my stomach, the one you get right before you cry. I turned around and ran out into the hall. Went to the nurse, called my mom, told her I was very sick, and I went home. Didn't go back to school for 4 days. Still make me shake my head when I think about it. All those years ago. Story 42. I asked out a girl in front of her soccer team during my senior year of high school. All of the girls applauded me for my courage, and a lot of them told the girl I was asking to just go on a date with me. She turned around and walked away. She later told me that she didn't like me that way, and that I should find someone else. As soon as I found someone else, she started getting all friendly with me, and then offered to in a Dairy Queen bathroom. Spotting the crazy from a mile away, I declined, and she told everyone that I had the world's smallest. I went on a date with a girl named Mara. She was kind of nice. We hung out again after and watched a movie, again, kind of nice. I asked her a couple of days later if she wanted to do something. She said, "Oh, I'm busy," and closes her dorm room door. I get talked to by a bunch of her friends telling me to leave her alone and stop harassing her, because it isn't going to happen. What a... Story 43 asked a girl out to watch a play. During the intermission, she went to the toilet. She never came back for the second part of the play. It turned out that she sneaked home. Story 44 cut off all communication for weeks after I asked her. I was friends with her sister, so she helped deliver the message. Okay, if you don't want to, you could just say no. Story 45, I asked a girl to go out to dinner on Friday. She told me she was busy that night. I went to the restaurant with my mother that Friday instead, and the girl was there with my best friend. Story 46, there was a guy named Drew. He was brooding and strange, and would ride a skateboard wearing a trench coat that was too long. So when he was rolling on his board, it looked like he was levitating. I was 15 and thought he was the most exquisite thing ever. So I agonized over the perfect thing to say to him that would make him fall in love with me. I walk up while he is lighting a cigarette and motion with my cigarette. I did not smoke. He offers the flame, and I bend over and light it. I start off with my perfect fall in love with me sentence until Drew cuts me off and says, "You know your hair is on fire, right?" Once informed of this, I started yelling and running around in circles, slapping at my head like Shemp from the Three Stooges. After that, he could not see me without bursting into hysterics and would put his hand on top of his head and wiggling his fingers like he was on fire. TLDR, tried to ask a guy out and ended up lighting my hair on fire. Story 47, I finally asked out a girl I was working with. I scored some concert tickets to something she really wanted to see. While we're there, she gets super drunk. I have to babysit her, and she ends up making out with some guy she knows from school. To further my shame, we end up camping out with those guys, and she goes into their car and passes out. I'm forced to share a tent with the guy she made out with and his friends. One of them vomited all over the tent during the night. Story 48, I have a story about rejecting someone. Rather than being rejected, I'm late to the game, so I'm sure this won't get seen, but when I was in like 5th grade, this one boy comes up to me at the bus stop and asked me if I would be his girlfriend. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't had a boyfriend before, and I was embarrassed that he had asked me in front of all of the people around me, so I just punched him in the face. I feel so bad about it. Still am slightly less socially awkward these days. It was probably a pretty bad rejection for him.